Stories from Upanishads, retold by Arghya Goswami. Hello, my dear friends and listeners. Today's episode is very different from all other episodes. If you remember, I ask few questions at the end of each of my episode. The listener with correct answers will be invited to my show. So, today is the day where I will have the first ever Listeners Hub episode. Srila Bhattacharya from California, USA had answered the questions correctly from the episode of Satyakama. So I interviewed her recently and was enriched to know her thoughts on the messages from Upanishads. Here's the recording from the interview. Hi Srila, how are you doing?
I am doing fine, Arghya.
That's great. Great to know. In fact, I'm really honored to have you in my show over here. For the benefit of our listeners, can you please introduce yourself?
Of course. And honestly, I am honored that you have invited me to this conversation. So, you already know my name. I'm Srila. I grew up in Agartala, a small northeastern town in India. And then I did my engineering from MNNIT Allahabad. And I have an elder sister, and my husband and I are high school friends. We have two kids, a boy and a girl. Currently, I live in the Bay Area for over 2 decades now in California.
Mhm.
And for living, I work for Roche.
Yeah. So tell me, really, what actually motivated you reading Upanishad, and what actually drew you towards that?
Sure. So before getting into the conversation, I would like to put such a disclaimer that, whatever I say is my understanding of the
Sure.
questions you will ask me, and
Sure.
it can be wrong. And also, I follow a lot of lectures on Upanishads from Swami Sarvapriyananda, and I will be quoting him. And
Okay.
again, those are my interpretation of what he is saying. So I am accountable for everything that I say incorrect.
Sure. So, yeah, I completely agree to that, because neither I am a guru in Upanishad. It's all about interpretations. Like, it's all Sanskrit words, and way you actually interpret it is uh, it's up to you how you want to present it and how you want. It's completely up to you. No issues. Yeah, carry on.
So your question about what motivates me in reading Upanishads. So, Arghya, I feel Upanishads are timeless wisdom. They form the highest philosophical and spiritual teachings of Vedas.
Right.
Every time I read them, I feel like they're classical art. So it's
Right.
like peeling, every time I read them, I find a new meaning, a new experience, a new
Right.
realization.
Right.
It gets deeper and deeper.
Mm.
So the Upanishads are more inward.
Mhm.
It trains our mind and senses. It is
Right.
more focused on the medium of knowing, which
Mm.
is our mind. So they never fail to surprise me. And every time I read, I feel like how much more I have to read. So
Right.
I'm very motivated because of, that continuous exploration.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. It's more about actually finding yourself within them, right? So it's like an universe, like endless universe, an infinite universe, right? Because every time when I have read Upanishads, or I'm still reading Upanishads actually, and every time when I start interpreting all those verses, or contemplate myself, each time I read it, I find new meanings to it actually. Right.
Exactly.
That's a very funny part of it. That's why I say it's kind of endless. It's
Mhm.
infinite. Like, there's no boundaries set to what you contemplate. Moving on, what do you think? What is the greatest values, or like takeaways or learnings when you read Upanishad?
There is so much that we can talk about, and we can take the entire hour, just answering this question.
Right.
But, I'll just focus on few things that I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it talks about life and death. It talks about the self and the higher self. These Upanishads are often dialogues between a student and a teacher in the form of Q&A.
Right.
And the questions are profound and the answers are extraordinarily profound. Like, what is life?
Right.
What is there after death? Right?
Right.
What is, like you said, the universe is like endless. What
Right.
is it? What
Right.
is going on in the universe?
Right.
And a lot of time it reflects on this question, like, what is consciousness? These questions are so deep, and the answers that we get, like, I will quote one question particularly that comes in multiple contexts. I think it came in Mundaka Upanishad and Chandogya Upanishad in many circumstances. Like, what is that one thing which known that everything becomes known? So let's take the popular clay and clay pot examples that has been used in so many Upanishad lectures.
Right.
That if you know clay, you know everything that is made up of clay.
Right.
Right. So it's like knowing the cause and the effect. So if we know the cause, we know everything about the effect.
Right.
So the answer that we got in those contexts in the Upanishads is that if you know Brahman, you know everything.
Let's quickly interrupt you because my thoughts again, it's all about our contemplation of the same thought. Don't you think there's a kind of a thin or a dotted line connection between Newton's third law? Every action has a reaction to it. So same thing, right? So unless you don't know the action, the reaction will also not be known to you. So same thing, I believe, same thing has been conveyed in a different way in this Upanishad, what you just now said, right?
Absolutely. And, like, answering really to your question, going back to the learnings, it's like it gives, Upanishads is like a guide, it guides us to apprehend the reality beyond ordinary knowledge, which is, I feel, the biggest value. And then, that's the reason that as we grow older, we find more meaning to it because we have so much more experience in life, right?
Right.
And for the greatest takeaway, Arghya, I will quote Swami Sarvapriyananda exactly, because in many of his lectures, he said, if there is one takeaway that we have to quote or we have to understand from the Upanishads, then that is Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. It's a quote from the Chandogya Upanishad that says, you are one with the entire universe, right? So that one cause of which the entire universe is a manifestation, like one, Brahman.
Oh, wow.
So I will take that, I'll leave the takeaway at that, because I think it has been systemically discussed in many Upanishads, and it's like the synopsis. So.
Completely agree to that. In fact, like later on in my podcast series, I will come up with several other stories or debates or question answer kind of thing where actually I will talk about Tatsvamasi, basically that thou art, the famous quote what just now you quoted. So there are stories related to that. I will definitely come up with those also.
Yeah, that will be very interesting because that has been mentioned in so many Upanishads and in so many contexts, right? So
agreed.
Like, I think in Chandogya Upanishad itself, it has been mentioned 9 times.
Right, exactly. And best and another thing, it has been cross-referenced also everywhere. It has cross-reference to Chandogya, the same verse have been cross-referenced many times in different forms actually. So it's very interesting because these are all interconnected texts. According to certain historians, the Upanishads were actually written at a period of more than 2000 years, because there are more than 250 Upanishads actually, right? And whatever Adi Shankaracharya commented on, call them as principal Upanishad or Dashopanishad, what we call it, right? So those are the main focus area. But apart from that, there are many other Upanishads. During Akbar's time, there is a Akbar Upanishad also, right? That basically Upanishad is a reflection of the society or the thought process. Right. So as India's society changed historically, right, from ancient India to medieval India to modern India, Upanishad also grew along with it, and it changed its forms. It has got influences of the early Upanishad. The Dashopanishad has more like influence of Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, what you call. Then later on, you will find a lot of Buddhist influence, Jainism influence, and then also Islamic influence also. So it's very interesting, right?
The Upanishadic view of religion is so interesting, right? You can use that as a topic sometimes later,
That's something to really like we need to understand later on. Okay, but like coming back to our discussion over here, like anything specific verse which really inspires you the most, and what do you think about that verse?
I will choose one verse from the Isha Upanishad that it's very common. A lot of people know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I will first recite it for you in Sanskrit. Okay. And then we can go on the English meaning and the contemplation, what I feel from that verse.
Right.
So let me first do the verse.
Sure.
It's the Om Purnam shloka that we know.
Yeah.
So Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnatya Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishvate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So that is infinite. This is infinite. From that infinite, this infinite has manifested. Right. So if you take this infinite from that infinite, the infinite alone remains. Om, peace, peace, peace. So that's the shloka with the meaning.
It is one of the, actually, although this shloka seems to be just of 3 lines, right? But in my view, actually, it is like you cannot actually measure the depth of it, right?
Yeah, it's like a subject.
Right. It's like a subject in itself. So that's a very interesting thing. Because of this podcast, which I started reading Upanishad as well as Vedas. And recently, like when I was reading, trying to understand, really better word, Rig Veda, in like Mandala 10th of the Rig Veda, there is a very famous sukta called Nasadiya Sukta, right? And it is called the hymn of the creation in popular terms. And many scholars such as Griffith, Max Muller, everybody has actually translated that sukta in their way. But it all talks about the same thing. Like it's about infinite. Like even the creator doesn't know who created the creator. It's about the void, about the greatness, the depth of it. You actually don't know. It's sometimes you think of a Big Bang theory. I just wonder, these Upanishads or Vedas were written more than like 5,000 years from now. And our rishis or sages, they didn't have any telescope, they didn't have anything. How could they understand the Big Bang or evolution or how the life evolved, right? So it's all about infiniteness, what you just now talked about. Yeah.
So thank you. This is very good information that you just mentioned, Arghya. And if I am to, if you want me to talk about the meaning or how I look at it, so I feel that most religions indicate that God is the creator, right? Like our traditional religion. Yeah. And universe is the creation of that. So God is the cause and universe is the effect.
Right.
But what this mantra says is that from which something has come and that which has come are both the same. Right. It's the Purna. The ultimate reality is beyond causality. Right. It's neither the cause nor the effect. So it's not the transcendent or the immanent, like we see in, how we look at religion also.
Right.
It is the same Purnam. It's one,
Right.
right? So if we go back to the clay and clay pot example that we took earlier, Arghya,
Right.
so
Right.
the
Right.
cause is clay and the pot is effect, right?
Right.
Say I'm holding a clay pot in my hand.
Right.
So I'm holding the effect, right? So my question is then, where is the cause? So we feel that the cause is higher than the effect, right?
Right.
Because the cause is everywhere, in everything. So if we ask, where is the cause? The cause is right here in the
Right.
pot,
Right.
right? There is no pot other than the clay.
Mhm.
So it's one, right? So Purnam is beyond cause, beyond effect. It's one. So that's how I contemplate, this shloka, how it has been carrying the meaning for me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's nice. Like it's great to understand different thoughts of the same words from the various people. Actually, like way you think. If I contemplate, it will be more about the fullness, the
Mhm.
completeness which this universe gives us. Like you actually don't know, like actually from where you are coming from and where you are going to. It's a kind of a journey which is it's an endless journey for all of us, like it's
Yeah,
an endless
there's no
journey,
boundary, like you
right?
said.
There's no boundary to us. So it's
Mhm.
very interesting to know different thoughts. And as I said in the beginning, that more you read these texts, these ancient scriptures, every time you read it, every time you will think something new, right?
Yeah.
Some new thoughts will come to you. Okay, so now since like it's a part of this listeners hub for the stories from Upanishad, so you had answered the questions from the Satyakama's episode. So just for our listeners' sake, I will ask you the same questions. Please answer me those questions.
Oh,
Okay.
sure, sure.
So, what was Satyakama's agony before going to the hermitage of Rishi Haridrumata Gautama?
So Satyakama did not know his gotra or lineage.
Mhm.
That was needed to become a student of a revered guru or a
Right,
teacher.
right.
So he wanted to become a Brahmin, a learned man,
Mhm.
but his unknown gotra was a blocker to
Right.
achieve that. So that was his agony.
Good. Yeah, correct. The next one, well, what were the three non-human gurus or teachers who taught Satyakama about the Brahman?
So if you ask three, then it's the bull, the swan, and the fire.
Mm.
There were four in the story, but for three, I will answer this.
And also, I believe there was waterfowl also, right? The last one. Yeah. So those were the non-human gurus who taught about the Brahman to Satyakama, right? Okay. So what do you mean by Prakashvan, Jyotishman, Anantavan, and Ayatanavan?
Prakashvan is radiant,
Hmm.
Jyotishman is bright, Anantvan is endless, and Ayatanavan is all supporting.
Great. So those were the questions actually from the which you answered correctly, and you were the actually first one to actually answer the questions. That's why like I wanted to have you in my show. And definitely for all other listeners, please do write to me, and I'll pick up the lucky one and definitely have a similar episode like I'm having with Srila. Okay, now continuing with our discussion over here, do you think this my effort in retelling the stories from Upanishad adds any value? And do you really find it valuable or enjoyable?
Absolutely. Like I have listened to all of them, and I truly believe that there is a need for these stories to be told and retold.
Yeah.
Um, because I will also think, Orko, it's a courageous step of you to actually pick a topic that is thousands of years old, those boring, difficult texts, and focus on that. That's a great thing, because we need to know about them more and more.
Right.
And the other thing, like every time I listen to your stories, I can go back and read them, in the Upanishad directly, so that, because when I read something as a child
Mhm.
that it had a different meaning. It had a
Right.
storyline, it had
Right.
characters.
Right.
But as we grow older, we more try to explore the message,
Right.
the profound thought behind.
Right.
So let's take your first story, Nachiketa, that
Right.
you started with.
Right.
So I remember reading this as a child in Amar Chitra Katha, the
Same here.
Yama,
Same here.
right? And that the Brahmin boy is standing there. I still remember the cover page of Amar Chitra Katha. And at that time, what echoed in the story was to dare like a teenager, right? Because we were young and we thought, wow, he is so courageous. He's going to the Lord of Death,
Right.
But now, if you read the story again, and like you retold the story, right?
Right. Right.
And it reflects to reach for the highest with
Right.
everything that we have
Right.
and never count the cost.
Right.
So everything that we achieve, we owe it to this inexplicable, something that cannot be explained always, to
Right.
reach beyond our grasp,
Right.
right? So maybe next time when I read it again, I will find something else,
Yeah.
So, so Orgo, I feel that it's absolute necessity to have a forum to talk about these and learn and enrich.
Right.
And you are giving us that platform. So by retelling the stories.
Another thought, which actually why I actually started retelling these stories, like I've been to the software industry for last 23 years now. I believe you are more than my experience. So anyway, but like every day, like we are doing our job, right? Like doing something for the company or for wherever we work for. Then we do something for our family, for our children, for our wife or spouses, whatever, like father, mother, everybody, friends. But what are we doing for ourselves? Right? Nothing actually. We are just doing, serving, like a hub and spoke model. We are the hub and everything is right. So whole thought was that, like, how can we enrich ourselves from within? Is only the technical knowledge, because we are in technical line, is the technical knowledge sufficient? Maybe, but is it really fulfilling your desire? Is it giving you the peace, the calmness? I don't think so, right? It's like stress.
One is for the living, the other is for self.
Right, exactly.
Satisfaction.
So that was the major, and especially during the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, it actually changed the whole ball game of life. And that point in time, actually, I started reading more of these ancient texts from
Me too. Me too.
So that thing played in my mind, and then finally I thought, why not, whatever I have learned or what I'm reading, why don't I share these things with others? I think everybody will enjoy listening to this. And I think I was right, my decision was right, and I'm really truly happy to have you here and listen to these thoughts of yours. Thank you so much.
I mean, of course, and thanks for, like I said, thanks for inviting me, because every conversation and listening how you interpret the meaning, it gives a new dimension, and it is more enriching for me. Like if we have a forum of listeners who can come and talk about their experience and how they think, it will become such an enriched community for us to learn and navigate.
Right.
So
exactly. Thank you so much for that. What was your favorite story in this podcast series?
Just for I like all of them, but just for answering this question, I will take the story of Satyakama.
Okay.
Because I see it I know you already talked about the message in your story when you read about it, but I also feel that one thing that I want to add, firstly, I just love the message of the story, that for earning and education, lineage should not matter.
Right.
And knowledge does not come from lineage. It's both way.
Correct.
It's like for me to get an entry into a revered guru's school, my lineage should not be the factor, right? My quest and my sincerity and my curiosity for learning is what it should matter. But in our society,
actually, education for all in modern
education for all. exactly. But we can go to in a separate topic someday that,
Yeah.
how in the modern society or in the medieval society, this wasn't the fact.
Right. Right.
Education was very much limited to a certain class. So that's one part, I feel. And the second part is, the story alludes that we learn from our circumstance,
Right.
from our surroundings, from nature. Like
Right.
Satyakama learned each quarter of Brahman from non-human teachers, like we talked about it earlier.
Right.
And then after learning each quarter on his journey from the forest to his guru's ashram,
Right.
and then he came back, and Rishi Gautama, he again taught him all the quarters of Brahman from
Right.
end to end with
Right.
more meanings and examples,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so that becomes like an all-encompassing, education,
Right.
where we are receiving the conventional education training, and which is built on
Right.
our experience
Right.
and what we learn from our circumstances, from our surroundings,
Right.
and only then, and like you mentioned in your story, then he himself became a great guru,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Like story of Upakoshala, like he became a
Yeah.
good guru, and how he actually helped Upakoshala to reinvent himself. Right. Because
Mhm.
Upakoshala, although was a great student, but he was not happy with all the 12 years of training. He really wanted to actually understand the Brahman, and it and his attitude towards Upakoshala in the beginning of the story looked to be very weird, right? Like he just went away, and poor
Mhm.
child was asked to stay back in the ashrama, right? And but he went away only because he wanted Upakoshala to actually reinvent himself, to think what went wrong and work on them. And when all those fires came and taught him about the Brahman, right? It's a very interesting thing. So it's about how the perfect teacher should be. So
Yeah, I mean, you
so
have that in your other story, that King Janasruti,
yes, yes, that also,
how
right. Even
even in that.
that Raikwa, the cart puller, he himself is just a
Mhm.
cart puller. People will not think of him a learned man, but still his wisdom, his like thoughts was
He's
eye-opening
enlightened.
for the. So it's very interesting. But if you ask me, which is my favorite story till now, what I have told is the story of Prana, because it's about like I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I
it's
did, I
really
did. Mhm.
interesting, and I really find it like actually there is nothing called bad breath, like bad prana, like
Yeah.
everything actually is good. It's all about that time when we have a bad thoughts, we become a bad person. If we have a good thoughts, we become a good person, right? Our internal prana is never bad. So that's all about it, right? So I really like that whole story, the whole concept of it. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah, of course.
yeah,
And see how this, so many thousands and thousands of years ago
right,
these were written, and
right,
they're still timeless.
right,
you know
exactly,
we
exactly,
we are applying them in today's world, like
right,
this story of Satyakama, the way the education system should be.
right.
And so much we have been talking about all these, that there is, these days I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I don't read books.
Mhm.
And there was another time when people used to only read books and not realize what is in there.
Right,
But the education system at that time was so much more solid.
right, exactly, exactly,
and and they actually spent 12 years in Gurukul to learn and experience and feel, and so
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
you know
So we are really on the top of the hour now. So I just really want to ask you my last question for this particular show. Like any special request, or you would like to hear from me as a part of this series?
absolutely. I'm very interested to hear about Om,
Mm-hmm.
which is the Mandukya Upanishad, which is very small, and it's only talking about Om
Right,
and the consciousness of human mind, the sleeping, waking, dreaming, and the fourth state, the super conscious state, which is the Turiya.
right,
So it is so interesting, and it is so convincing about those states
It
of
is.
mind,
It is.
right? So it will be very nice to have that conversation sometime in any one of your episodes.
Definitely.
I mean, it doesn't have a story really in that Upanishad, but it has so many.
I can have it as a bonus episode where I can discuss about it, definitely. But
Yeah.
so I will. The whole problem is like I have to write it kind of good script around it to make,
Yes.
to make it understandable. It's very difficult to write a good script, so that's why I'm taking some time. So I will definitely write that, and
you keep collecting all the,
right, and I have
all
a
the requests.
bonus. I will definitely do it. Yeah, so Srila, it was really, really great talking to you, understanding your thoughts on Upanishad. Please keep listening to the news, whatever new
Of course,
episodes come.
of
Yeah,
course. It's for my own interest and benefit that I keep listening. And like I said, Arghya, there is so much pomp and grandeur out there. And you choose a topic like this. I'm really thankful for that because I am drawn to listening to them and understanding
right,
the meanings of it. So
right,
I'll do so for my own benefit.
right. Yeah, so great. I will again connect with you back in the future, and thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. So, friends, that was the interview I recorded with Srila Bhattacharya. I hope you too enjoyed it. Listeners Hub is an open platform. If you want to share your thoughts on the messages from Upanishads, please email me at arghyathinks@gmail.com, and I'll be really happy to host you and talk to you about your thoughts on Upanishads. So until then,
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
this podcast was created on Hubhopper Studio. If you wish to start your own podcast for free, visit www.hubhopperstudio.com.